Hi, everyone. Welcome to Wealth Window, where we make life better for everyone by sharing what we've done and what we learned from it. I'm Robert Nahas, and we talk with authors, entrepreneurs, and other experts to uncover their real stories behind their ideas, their journeys, and what drives them to do what they do. And today's guest is a perfect example of this. He's a physician and a #1 best-selling author. His name is Louis Pagan-Carlo, and he's a board-certified cardiologist with well over 3 decades. You can correct me on this, Louis, later if you want, but with over 3 decades of real life experience on the front lines with people facing their mortality and how to make the best of being prepared for the worst. I'm excited to explore his journey and lead. I'm excited to explore his journey that led to where he is today and all that he's done. Louis, welcome to Wealth Window. It's great to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, you're welcome. So we might as well let the cat out of the bag right away and just say that we already know each other because we've worked together on your book.
Yes. Yeah.
And being that I'm a ghostwriter, it's sort of like, okay. So, together with your incredible ideas and writing ability and so forth, we put together a wonderful book. I'll go ahead and put a picture of it up here now. It's called Your Life's Choice. And I'm going to ask you basically what drove you to reach out to me one day and say, hey, I want to write this book.
Well, as you may recall, when we started talking about this, it's been kind of a lifelong process. I grew up in a household full of older family members, and my grandparents and their siblings had a lot of influence in me growing up. So I've always felt comfortable talking to older people about difficult topics. And as I went into medicine, I started realizing that the topic of coming to terms with your mortality and deciding your wishes was something that was difficult for people to do all along. It's interesting that I graduated from med school in 1991, the year the Patients Self-Determination Act passed, which is that a patient has a right to, and has a say in their healthcare.
Mm.
And since 1991, only about 30% of the population fills in their end-of-life wishes or has discussions with family members so they can speak for them in case that the patient can no longer speak for themselves. So throughout my career, I basically encountered a lot of patients that were not prepared, had questions, had difficulty. So as my career developed, as I'm a cardiologist, and I truly believe in what cardiology has to offer patients. But at some point, even those technologies start failing, and I would encounter many patients that had difficulty either because they didn't understand what we were offering, either therapeutically or in discussions towards the end of life, or they wanted to talk about it and no one was willing to talk to them. So as part and parcel of my career, periodically, and I'd say at first it was rare, and the more I practiced, the more common it became. I became the doctor that would start talking to them about what they would want in case of X, whatever would happen. And obviously, that conversation is very easy to have when the patients are relatively healthy, but as they got sicker and sicker and they had more issues to contend with, it got more difficult because they were coming towards the end of life. And they were being offered therapies that may or may not offer any benefit to them.
Right. Yeah. Thank you. That was well put. So you're talking about situations where people, of course, we all want to live, but we also don't want to suffer a prolonged ending that's going to occur anyway, or, with certain criteria. Take my I have a relative that suffered for 8 months, and then the inevitable occurred anyway. You know, and that was a long time ago. But to see someone go through that, it was horrific because they kept resuscitating him. And so I can understand where you're coming from with this. And so, what does your book do for people?
So before I answer your question, did that patient, that relative of yours, every time they resuscitated, did that he or she come back the same person that they were before, or they were a little bit less, either in functionality, in their mentation, in how comfortable they were? I mean, that's what happens. The more episodes that you have, the less likely you're going to come back as the person you go into it.
Yeah, interesting.
Okay.
I mean, yeah, I would say it degraded. Maybe not so noticeable at first, just because this person was in rough shape to begin with, right? And like you've mentioned in the past, we have technology today that can defy, you know, the rules of engagement of like when we're supposed to go or not. And you know, when I was a kid, one time I went fishing and I brought the fish home, and there was still a fish alive. And this is going to gross people out, but it was true. So I cut his head off, and it was still, you know, breathing. And so I kept putting salt on it, and it just, I don't think it felt anything or anything, but it just stayed alive for an unnormal amount of time. And so, not so morbid in the sense of humans, keeping humans alive. We obviously want people to survive, but it's not always like we see on TV. It's rarely ever like that, where a person walks out of the hospital, smiles, and everything is normal, if not even better, in their condition after having a near-death experience or a death experience, or you know, being resuscitated in some way. So the thing is like, you know, when do we stop our amazing technology of saving life, and when does it become you know, morbid or degrading, demoralizing, what have you, where the person keeps getting made alive and they're going through a living hell, right?
So one thing that is very, and this is an observation, this is not a scientific study, is that people don't understand what it's like to get old, because currently at whatever age you're in, you don't know what you're going to be in 20 or 30 years. You don't understand what's going to happen to you or your body down the line. So as you get older, you are going to have diminishing function in some capacity, whether it's breathing or hearing or vision, or walking or independence or bowel incontinence. So as people start aging and the systems start failing, quality of life starts suffering, right? So like Andy Rooney said, we all want to live to be 100, but none of us wants to get old. Right? And you do not get to be 100 without getting old. And one other observation, or this is probably a truism, is that at some point in being old, people get tired of living. I've seen it in several relatives of mine that they keep asking, why am I still around? When my children are dying, I don't want to be around if my two daughters are not around. I don't want to depend on my grandchildren or my great-grandchildren for that matter, right? So quality of life suffers as you get old. And I think people should make choices on what they are willing to accept depending on their quality of life. I mean, it's okay if you lose one sense and then the other one can compensate. But if you have loss of vision, loss of hearing, inability to move, and you're just sitting in a bed, staring at the ceiling because you can't hear what people are telling you, you can't enjoy reading, you can't hear an audiobook, you can't see TV. What are you waiting for? Yeah. So at some point, people should, it's my opinion, people should start having discussions about, when I am not able to do this and this and this, it's time for me to go. There's a comedian that I've seen several times, I think it's on Instagram, that says that if she can't, 2 days go by and she does not ask for a martini or chocolate, it's time to pull the plug. Right? Those are the quality markers for her.
A little drastic, but okay. We
That's
get the point.
but
Yeah.
she's older, and it's actually her whole shtick, for the lack of a better word, is that age creeps up on people. Old age all of a sudden happens, and you find yourself in a situation that you never thought you'd be in.
Yeah. And so you're not talking about, okay, I'm ready to go and let's kill me. It's talking about not resuscitating,
Right.
letting that death take its natural course versus the technology we have today to keep people breathing or to feed them through tubes or intravenous and so on. So there's all these technologies that can keep a body alive. So you're saying that we have a choice if we follow the book and create what's called an Advanced Healthcare Directive, which is part of your living will that keeps the individual out of the predicament of not being able to now let the doctors or family know, so is that the whole premise really of the book.
So the book is helping people understand what they are choosing. I don't tell people what to choose.
Right.
Okay. There are people that want everything done. Well, then fill an Advanced Healthcare Directive that says I want everything done.
Meaning
no longer.
Meaning keep trying
Keep me
to
alive. Keep me alive as long as you possibly can. Okay. But there are people that don't want that. There are people that say, the classic line is, I don't want to live on machines. That's instructive in that you're saying that you don't want to be kept alive artificially, but that doesn't tell me as a physician or me as a son what to do.
Right.
So the point of filling an Advanced Healthcare Directive, which is really, we're kind of interchangeably using words here, but really an Advanced Healthcare Directive has your living will, which is a document that you specify what you want, done or not done, and then you have your medical proxy. Those two are what makes up your Advanced Healthcare Directive. So in your living will, you should say, I will accept intubation for 2 weeks. If after 2 weeks I cannot breathe by myself, I then decline this and this and this and this. Or you can say, I'll accept intubation for 3 months. But if at 3 months there's no chance of me not living on a respirator, I may not be willing to live. You have many choices here, and the choices are personal, and it's up to you to decide what you want. I am sure there is someone out there that quality of life means I'm on a respirator, I cannot talk, I cannot do anything independently, but seeing my family once or twice a week, just seeing them is enough quality of life for me. Well, then you choose that pathway. There are people that say, look, if I cannot, like this lady, if I cannot do any of these things, there is no point for me to continue living. These are my markers of quality of life.
Yeah, well, that brings up another interesting point, which is the individual telling family and physicians what you want, but also, like, let's say a person doesn't get this Advanced Healthcare Directive, which is a document that's notarized and it's accepted in the state that one lives in, and so it's very official and it put things clearly depicted on what one wants. If someone didn't do that and they did want to stay alive, right, but family thinks otherwise, and they pull the plug, so to speak. You know what I'm saying? So that could even reverse on the person that way too. So there's a number of reasons why to have this documentation, these documents in.
So I absolutely think I think there are two ways you can do it. You either have the documents, which is clear, the doctors understand, and they're legally binding up to a point, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or you have lots of conversations with your loved ones so they all understand your wishes.
Mm-hmm.
So that automatically the doctors will turn to the first person they turn to is the spouse, or if there is no spouse, the children.
Mm-hmm.
it becomes an issue if you have no spouse, no children, and now it's siblings or distant relatives. That's where it's much more useful to have an advanced healthcare directive if you have no one that can answer for you. Because, or the other possibility is you don't have anyone, but you have the state assign someone. You should have conversations with these people so that they understand your wishes.
Yeah, it's a good point. From what I've learned from you through the book and the courses that we've been creating together, it makes most sense to have the documentation, to have a person who you've chosen, who you feel you can trust that they will deliver at the time of challenge and not fold. If you, let's say that the person does tell family and brings it up a lot or whatever, and clearly brings it up to them, but there's nothing in writing, and then who is going to be the one to say no more? They might not be able to, versus having someone that you've delegated as that person and everything.
So it's always better to have that clarity so that it doesn't become a political
mess
situation or a mess for the doctors to attend to, because sometimes the families are not united. They don't understand. If there's two children nearby that want to follow dad's wishes, but the one child that's been away from the family for 30 years all of a sudden has a guilty conscience and wants that alive at all costs, then who do you listen to, right? It becomes for the healthcare team, it becomes a very difficult situation who to listen to if the spouse is not available, and then there's 3 or 4 children. Okay, so it is much easier to have documents than not, but it is far more important. I mean, if you have a terminal condition, for example, and your family has accepted that you are dying, or you've accepted you are dying, then it is far more important to have those conversations, because they will all have listened, and you have a terminal diagnosis. If you have a terminal diagnosis, bringing you back for the next 2 weeks may make little sense. It just adds more suffering as opposed to adding quality of life. So I would say you always choose to be resuscitated if the chance of having good quality of life after the resuscitation is high. If it isn't, then you need to start thinking, because you have to then be clear on what you're willing to tolerate in terms of limitations, and you have to be clear on how many times you would like to be resuscitated. I mean, it becomes the more the organs fail, the more chance you're going to have recurrent events. Okay, biology always wins. So I mean, I've yet to meet someone who lives more than a standard lifestyle. I mean, a lifespan. It could be up to 106 years or 116. I heard there was someone who just died who was 116. Wow. But for the most part, we all have a finite amount of time, right? And do we force the issue and keeping you alive because the family expects it, even if we understand that this is not likely to be successful?
Yeah, got it. So we're not necessarily completely talking about people in their 80s and 90s and 100s. You mentioned in passing that, correct me if I'm wrong, but someone in their 30s onward should consider having an advanced healthcare directive.
I mean, there's a population that most of us in the U.S. don't think about. It's the foster children that at 18, the system kicks them out and they're out on the streets. They have no guardians. They may have friends, but these kids are 18-year-old in the streets, right? Even them, they should have some sort of legal documents in line, because they have no one. Otherwise, who do we turn to? They're 18. Chances are we're going to try to keep him alive at all costs, right? So I think anyone that has a family, anyone that has a legacy to leave, whatever age that is, should consider it. If you're considering buying life insurance, you should consider what I'm filling in. And what may be a perfectly acceptable option for you at 30 is not going to be a perfectly acceptable option for you at 80. You may choose to be resuscitated at all costs at 30 because you're young, your chances of recovery are good, and you have a family to live for. At 80 or 85, your children are gone. You may or may not have, your children are grown up and they're independent. Your quality of life has suffered. Now you have to start thinking, what do I do?
Yeah, interesting. So it doesn't necessarily have to be of old age. It could be somebody could get hit by a car, or someone's going in for surgery. Whenever you're put under with anesthesia, I mean, there are risks, right? I see the forms that they make you sign when you go there. So those are other reasons, right?
So when you go to any procedure, you should consider it. Absolutely. Mostly because the interesting thing is, if a doctor causes a sudden death episode for whatever reason, we are legally bound to try to rescue you.
Mm-hmm.
If it happens in the OR, in a cath lab, during a procedure, we have to rescue you. But it doesn't mean that there's going to be a successful rescue. I would say 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10, if you have a sudden death episode, and for example, it's an arrhythmia or an abnormal rhythm of the heart, and you get rescued immediately, you're going to come back perfectly well, right? So that's one thing. But let's say it's a complex situation. They don't get to you quickly enough, and you have some brain damage. Now it becomes very complex. What happens next time this happens? If you're intubated, if they're going to keep you intubated, there are many things that have to go into the consideration. In medicine, we will try to rescue you no matter what. If you don't tell us what you want, we will do everything to keep you alive, particularly if you're in your youngest years. And youngest years nowadays is probably up to 70.
Interesting.
Right?
Yeah.
So you have to think ahead and be prepared. If you've considered for whatever reason you need to buy life insurance, you should be considering this. If you're considering an estate plan, you should be considering having an Advanced Healthcare Directive. If you've even considered buying a funeral, a burial plot, you should consider this.
Yeah, makes total sense. So where can people find your book?
Well, we can buy it in most bookstores and certainly through Amazon.
Good. Excellent. And so I want to thank you so much for being here, Louis. We're starting out with this show, and I was wanting to make sure that you were on it, and you were so gracious to say yes, and appreciate it. And what we'll do is, with the description of this video, we'll put links to Amazon, and your website, and for people to be able to contact you. I know that there are a couple of guides out there that people can download for free. One of them is a free report that talks about, don't go to the hospital without this. Another one is about medical power of attorney. Both excellent guides. And so if you don't mind, I'll also include those links, and they could click on them both or just do one of them. But if they fill out the small form, they'll get the document, and then they'll be connected to you. And that way, if they want to reach out or have any questions or whatever, they'll be able to find you.
Well, yeah, the easiest way to find me is through silvermangos.com.
Okay. This is your website here.
Right.
That's the homepage. That's what it looks like. Good. And, also, I guess last but not least would be like a simple email, which could be support@silvermangos.com.
Right.
And I know that your time is limited, but that you now and then offer one-to-one consultations to people. So let's say someone reads your book, they go through the steps of the book, because the book brings you through step by step, explaining things on how to decide and put together, your Advanced Healthcare Directive, and they want to kind of just talk to you for maybe half hour or however long, that you do give consultations. So why don't we say that they could email you at let's just see here. I think it's
support@silvermangoes.com.
just keep it at that. Okay, because there is another one, but let's keep it at that. Good. That keeps it simple. Good idea. Okay, good. So I really want to thank you for being here. And if let's see. So this is Wealth Window, and I appreciate y'all being here. And if you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to see more, refer to your friends and let them know about it. Subscribe and put the word out. And I want to thank you very much for being here. So thank you, everyone.